Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's OptumRx webinar, Focus on Menopause. My name is Brittany Turman with Optum, and I will be your host. At the top of your webinar screen are multiple application tools that you can use to customize your viewing experience of the speakers and slides. You can expand your slide area by clicking and dragging any of the four corners of the slide deck. In the Related Resources tool, you'll find links to related articles and other content. At any time, you can enter questions into the Q&A tool. Any questions we do not have time for today will be captured for later follow-up by your OptumRx contact. We also have a tool that you can use at any time to fill out a brief survey during the presentation to give us feedback. You will receive an email with a link to the recording in the next 24 hours. This presentation does use streaming audio through your computer speakers. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help tool up there at the top. I would now like to introduce Brittany Drury, Director, New Product Development, Women's Health. Brittany?
Thank you, Brittany. And thank you everyone for joining us today to focus on menopause, which is a critical but often overlooked stage in women's health. As Brittany T mentioned, I'm Brittany Drury and I lead our women's health strategy at OptumRx. And I'm here today with Dr. Anna Bhatnagar, who is our Senior Vice President and Associate Chief Medical Officer, and who is also a board-certified OBGYN. So today we'll cover the importance of women's health and also the impact of menopause in the workforce. We'll also explore why the perception of menopause therapy has swung so dramatically over the past 2 decades and how menopause care and policy is evolving today. We'll wrap up by covering how OptumRx is addressing menopause care gaps, and then we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. So to set the stage, let's talk a little bit about why women's health deserves focus and attention. Women are 51% of the US population and nearly half of the workforce. They're also significant decision makers. They drive 80% of healthcare decisions and 85% of consumer spending. Yet we see that women spend 30% more on out-of-pocket prescriptions than men, which in 2024 alone totaled $8.5 billion. And still women face persistent health gaps. And this is because of diagnostic bias, underdiagnosis, limited access to care, and limited awareness and education across a variety of women's health conditions. And menopause is one of those. So with these disparities in mind, both UHG and OptumRx have made women's health a strategic priority. And OptumRx has identified menopause as our first area of focus. So let's jump in and focus on menopause with a look at some workforce trends and the cost impact. As I mentioned on the previous slide, women make up nearly half of the workforce, and 20% of the total workforce is nearing or currently navigating menopause today. The labor statistics actually show that this menopause population is the fastest growing segment of the labor force. So we can see down on the first line there, women aged 55 and older are expected to increase by 13% over the next 5 years. And menopause symptoms can actually onset as early as age 35. So we can see that menopause is actually going to trickle down into and impact even that second tier of the workforce age bracket from age 25 to 54, which is also increasing by 6%. So definitely menopause is going to play a big role into the future. And so we are seeing employers responding. Actually, the percentage of employers who are offering menopause benefits has quadrupled over the last 2 years from only 4% to 18%, which is great to see. And it's actually a smart move because research is showing that menopause intersects with chronic conditions like heart disease and diabetes, and chronic conditions are driving 90% of our US healthcare spending. So investing in midlife benefits isn't just about retention, it's also about reducing long-term costs and, of course, improving workforce health. Before we dive into the details of menopause, I just want to take a quick moment to level set on menopause and talk a little bit about what that journey looks like. All right. So it's important to know that menopause really isn't a single event. It's actually a multi-year health stage, and it's triggered by the decline in estrogen. At a certain time, typically between ages 45 to 55, this estrogen production begins to drop. But this decline can actually happen as early as age 35, which is what we term perimenopause in the middle there. Symptoms can last anywhere between 7 to 10 years, and they can be highly disruptive. They can impact quality of life, but also drive absenteeism, presenteeism, turnover, and also contribute to higher medical costs. Unfortunately, as you see in the stats below, only 21% of women seek professional medical care for perimenopause or menopause symptoms. And only 47% of women age 50 to 64 say that their healthcare provider has spoken to them about what to expect in menopause. So there are a lot of women out there who are experiencing these symptoms, but likely not even attributing them to having entered the menopause health stage, and not knowing that there are treatments out there for them to help alleviate some of these symptoms and, of course, promote long-term health. And this leads to a lot of downstream costs. Down on the right-hand side there, this lack of access, education, and awareness is estimated to contribute $1,300 per woman per year from untreated menopause symptoms. So with this in mind, let's discuss some of the clinical implications of menopause. So, Dr. B, what are some of the health risks that women face across these menopause stages?
Thanks, Brittany, for that tee up. And as you mentioned, menopause is a season. So it's a time of transition, hormonal decline, and that's times when we usually see a change in health status in an individual. And I'm going to walk through the different stages and how we think about the health impacts throughout those stages. In premenopause, meaning before menopause, you do see those hormonal imbalances arising, and you might experience pelvic floor discomfort, which can be bladder symptoms or vaginal dryness. In the perimenopause or around menopause, that's when you see some bone loss and changes in your metabolism, where there's weight gain and there is a tendency to get obesity incidence to rise at this time with the fluctuating hormonal balance. During menopause itself, which the average age in the United States is 52, that's when we see a rise in the incidence of type 2 diabetes. Some of that weight gain has contributed to that health risk, and heart disease, because your cholesterol and other metrics also change with the hormone changes you're experiencing. And post-menopause, meaning after you've been stopped your period and been diagnosed with menopause, coming to the end of the estrogen decline, you see some cognitive changes. And there is some brain dysfunction that occurs during this period of time. And we have seen in women that undergo early menopause, earlier brain aging. So we're still exploring the impact of hormones on the brain, but there's definitely some cognitive changes that occur. So let's talk about the symptoms that we see and the treatments that are available. So how we should think about these treatments today is an individualized approach, meaning that we have evolved from sort of a overall strategy where everyone got the same sort of treatment to tailoring that to the individual symptoms, risks, benefits, and managing expectations that someone might bring to the table about their own interest in getting hormonal therapy or not. So symptoms range from vasomotor symptoms, which are also known as hot flashes and not night sweats. And this is the most common symptom, and you may hear about this in social media or lay literature, et cetera, because there's a lot of conversation about this right now. It affects about 80% of menopausal women. And there is variability in that, and your ethnicity can drive that. Some ethnicities experience more hot flashes versus others. And then we speak to mood changes. Again, that's related to some of the hormonal changes that affect your sleep, the way you process, your cognitive changes, the weight gain. So all of these are contributors and are seen very commonly. Hormone replacement therapy, and that's a bit of a misnomer because we don't actually replace your hormones. You're never going to get back to the premenopausal state. You're going to get some hormonal support such that your symptomology is improved. And that can occur through estrogen and progestin therapy. Some of the support can occur with non-hormonal alternatives. And SSRIs and SNRIs are antidepressants, but they do ease some of the symptoms that you get as far as mood and sleep, and therefore are used as well to alleviate menopause symptoms. And again, we shouldn't forget about lifestyle modifications, exercise, complementary therapies that help with some of the sleep disturbance and other aspects to the menopausal symptom mitigation. So what else can we use? We can use local estrogen. So for those genitourinary and vaginal symptoms we talked about, there are a variety of estrogen-based local therapies. And then osmethylene is a FDA-approved drug for dyspareunia, meaning pain while intercourse. And that is one where it's an oral drug, but it does have effect of the local tissue in the vagina. And then for sexual dysfunction, we could discuss other treatment options, and sometimes testosterone and other therapies are also come into play here. So there's a vast array of treatment options. And as Brittany noted, many women feel the impact of these menopausal symptoms to the point 40% of the time they have symptoms that they think impact their work performance. So let's go to the next list. What are some of the innovations that we're seeing here, some of the new treatment options? And I will go back to a little bit of the historical construct around why there's a gap in therapy and how we've gotten to where we are today. But let me talk about the new therapies first. So as far as non-hormonal treatment options, I'm excited to say that there was a new therapy just approved last week, and it was to treat vasomotor symptoms. It is similar to the drug listed here, which is an NK3 receptor agonist called Veozah, and the new one is called Linquit. And again, it is a NK3 receptor agonist, not an estrogen-based therapy, but does address hot flashes. And other new drugs that are used in this space are used to support osteoporosis or bone health, and that would be drugs like Prolia, Xgeva, and there's biosimilars in this space, so there's a more affordable options coming for that treatment option. We're also thinking about delivery modes, and in the past, over time, we've done mostly oral hormone support therapy, but now we're looking at transdermal, gels, sprays. And part of the reason for this is the other ways of delivering the same drug does mitigate some of the side effects. When you take something orally that's digested through your liver and can increase risk of blood clots in the case of estrogen. But doing a transdermal estrogen can reduce that risk. And therefore, those are coming into play more often. And it's more convenient to the patient to take those, and they deliver more steady dose as well. Digital health programs, this is another way to help with that lifestyle support, symptom tracking, coaching, and improving lifestyle overall to support you through your menopause journey. And then lastly, I'll go over combination therapy. This is more explorative, so I'll just make sure I underscore that. GLP-1s are part of every conversation we have today, and they're being studied here in the menopausal phase of life as well. And in some ways it makes sense because there is that weight gain with hormonal changes, And those metabolic changes are often addressed with obesity management, which the GLPs are indicated for and used in this space. But the application for menopause alone and studies are still coming out. I do want to caution, because there is, as I noted, a lot of conversation around menopause and some misinformation, and compounded HRT is one of those therapeutic options that really hasn't been studied. It's gotten a lot of attention, and there's a growing consumer market, but they're not FDA approved. There's quality concerns and potency variability that can lead to some safety risks. So that is not a therapy that's recommended at this time. So this is where we are today, but how did we get here? Why is there such a care gap? Let's talk about hormone therapy and how we've thought about that over the decades. So prior to 2002, and I can, and it's interesting because I graduated residency in 2002. So what I learned while I was training through medical school residency really just turned on its head at 2002. And in the 40s, we discovered that estrogen can mitigate the symptoms of menopause. And there was abundant source for estrogen through actually the urine of pregnant mares, and that conjugated equine estrogen became standard hormone treatment option. Over time, we learned we had to add progestin to that, because women can get cancer of the uterus if they still have it and take estrogen without the progesterone. And that became kind of the standard. Everyone was taking that treatment option. And then we were trying to explore whether it was helping with chronic disease prevention. And to that end, the NIH commissioned the WHI, or Women's Health Initiative study, and that was published in 2002. When that trial was published, it reported that estrogen and progesterone therapy, like I spoke about, increased the risk of breast cancer, stroke, and coronary heart disease in individuals in the study. And what I'll note is the population of the study tended to be older. Those women were in their 60s. And as I mentioned earlier, the average age of menopause is 52. So this is about a decade into menopause that the study population was around. When this published, the FDA went ahead and put a black box warning on all estrogen containing products. And this led to a lot of caution and fear around the use of hormone support therapy during the menopausal years. Fast forward to today. So we've learned a lot in this time since 2002 to present years. And there was a guidance issued by the North American Menopause Society, a position statement, where it underscored the need to relook at this data and to consider use of hormone support therapy in women that were younger and experiencing menopausal symptoms for persistent symptom relief. July of this year, the FDA held a meeting of experts. And again, nearly unanimously, they supported that current research indicates most women can benefit from treatment of menopausal symptoms with hormone support therapy. And we need to be individualized, look at the risk benefit for each individual, and then proceed with treatment options. However, even today, utilization for these treatments remains very low. And let's take a look at the next slide to show you how low. So you can see the decline, and this is from 2007 to 23, that there has still continued to be rapid decline in utilization for hormone therapy. And the steepest drop has occurred in the oldest individuals that are in the range. That's the orange bar. And utilization remains low throughout. But I think we need to think about this in the context of the historical environment that we've seen. And now we're educating, and that's why some of the solutions we're going to speak to later on will also be so helpful when we have a care gap. So what are the positive health impacts that we do know about? I mentioned them. I'll underscore them a bit more. So hormone therapy, when used appropriately, can certainly address those vasomotor or hot flash symptoms, and that can be up to 75%. So that's a huge relief to individuals that are having difficulty day-to-day functioning. Longer term, there's a reduction in heart disease and death risk because of the stabilization of your cholesterol and other markers that lead to increased CV disease. Bone strength, again, it prevents fractures, which is another important marker of longevity, because once you see someone get a osteoporotic fracture, they're really on the decline part of their health, and this helps preserve that bone strength. When we're looking at non-hormonal treatments, it's addressing the symptom reduction that we spoke about, reducing those vasomotor symptoms, and the non-hormonal therapies are pretty good. They're anywhere in the 40 to 50% range of reduction. There's some health concerns with especially Veoza. It has some liver toxicity, and the FDA did add a warning there for increased monitoring. And so we'll see what the new therapy shows as far as that. But there are some treatment options. And again, risk benefits need to be weighed. And then we talked about the drug osmemifene. Sorry, I'm familiar with that. That is also used for vaginal dryness. So other options exist and should be used. So now, Brittany, let's take a look at the cost of this treatment and the trend as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dr. B. I think the financial picture may surprise folks. The good news is that while utilization trends for menopause medications are increasing, the actual per member per month spend remains very low compared to chronic conditions. This table shows menopause-related therapeutic classes down the left-hand side there, and their associated PMPM spend and trend across across commercial, Medicare, and Medicaid. And so I'll highlight a few key insights here. For most menopause prescriptions, many of them are generics, which of course keeps the overall spend pretty minimal. For example, the first line here, systemic estrogens and combinations, has a spend of 67 cents PMPM in the commercial plan, even with that 34% trend increase. So that's extremely low compared to chronic conditions like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, where the PMPM cost can be many times higher. And I'll also point down to kind of midway down on the fourth line or so in the newer NK3 receptor antagonist class, where Veoza, that's the only drug there, is driving the trend growth of 74% in commercial, 105% in Medicare, and 145% in Medicaid. But even so, the absolute spend is still under 10 cents PMPM. And the reason for this is because scripts for this higher cost drug remain pretty low. Some of that is due to some of the risks that Dr. B had mentioned that are associated with this drug. And of course, most members are able to get their symptoms under control through other therapies and those generics that we had mentioned. Down at the bottom there, osteoporosis agents and antispasmodics in Medicare are higher at around $2.68 and about $5 respectively. But again, these costs are still very modest compared to other high cost categories. So the takeaway here is really that improving access to menopause treatment is not only clinically impactful, as Dr. B had mentioned on the previous slide, and some of those health outcomes, but it's also cost effective. And so addressing menopause symptoms early on can really help curb some of that downstream cost that's tied to chronic conditions like heart disease, diabetes, and osteoporosis that really intersect with this health stage. But cost, of course, isn't the only factor that's shaping this conversation around menopause. So I want to also talk about policy that's really having an influence on this space. So let's look at how some of that legislation is really gaining momentum across the country. In 2025 alone, over 20 menopause bills were introduced across 13 states. And I want to emphasize that this is a very active and evolving space. I'm checking this legislation every few weeks because there's constant movement, which is really exciting. We are seeing about these three themes emerging that are listed here in the orange, the blue, and the green. The first one is coverage mandates, workplace protections, and then education initiatives. So the coverage mandates are focused on requiring health plans to cover things like menopause evaluations and FDA-approved treatments, and removing barriers like prior authorizations and, in some cases, step therapy for hormone therapy. The workplace protections are really about including remote work accommodations for employees, and some of them are also including paid leave for symptom management. Education initiatives are primarily focused on public health campaigns, research, and continuing medical education requirements for providers, also known as CMEs. But across these different mandates and laws that have been introduced, they vary. So it's important to take a look at each one and what the specifics are of them, because they're all slightly different. States like Illinois, New York, and New Jersey are really leading the charge with bills that span across these three categories that I mentioned. And several bills have already been passed in Illinois, Louisiana, Oregon, Rhode Island, Maine, and Nevada. So we can see that menopause legislation is starting to gain traction, and we expect this trend to continue. These mandates, of course, have potential impact on health plans and employers, and some of them are going into effect as early as January of 2026. So something to keep an eye on. While legislation is accelerating change and making impactful movement in each state, it's going to take some time for this baseline of menopause care, both access and education surrounding menopause care to really lift across the nation. So what can we do about that in the meantime? OptumRx is seeking to bridge this gap. We are introducing a menopause care program that connects members to comprehensive menopause care designed to support members really across every stage of menopause. This model integrates clinically grounded care with personalized lifestyle support. It includes an onboarding health assessment, which identifies each member's menopause stage, their symptom severity, and health risks for related conditions like some of those we mentioned, osteoporosis, heart disease, and others, which is really a key opportunity to enable early intervention. It also includes virtual clinical care with menopause-trained MSCP credentialed clinicians, which enables members to receive very tailored treatment plans surrounding menopause and what their unique experience looks like. That care includes prescribing of FDA-approved hormonal and non-hormonal treatments, of course, based on what is most appropriate for that member and what that member's preferences are. It also includes 24 access to app-based support tools, including things like symptom trackers, personalized educational content that's tailored and evolves based on that member's symptoms and how those symptoms are changing over time, along with lifestyle support and tips. It also includes unlimited one-on-one coaching and live Q&A events with menopause experts. So very robust platform and care wraparound. So we feel this program is really not only about improving that quality of life through symptom improvement, but of course also represents, as we've demonstrated through looking at some of this spend and trend and the correlated disease risk associated with menopause, it also represents an opportunity to promote long-term member health along with potential cost savings. We're looking to launch this program within the next quarter, and we're going to be conducting a 6-month pilot program, which will have a total cost of care study associated with it to further validate this potential cost saving. So we're really excited about this program, and if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, we urge you to reach out to your account management team to learn.